I want you to focus on that. All right. Now, does anyone need me to put the discussion questions up or to remind you what you're doing? Speak. Anyone need me to put the discussion questions up? You all have them and you all know what question you're doing, right? Okay, so let me just review. So number one, discuss the reasons for the collapse of animalism, not animal farm, animalism. That is animalism as a political theory, okay? So for example, animalism is unrealistic because by nature, human beings are selfish, right? And George Orwell's Animal Farm, the principal means through which the pigs corrupt the vision and spirit of animalism is the perversion of language, the rewriting of history, and the use of terror. So what you need to do for this question is give me as many examples as you can of the pigs using language and manipulating language to subjugate the animals. As many examples as you can of them rewriting history and of them using terror to instill fear in the animals. And the last question. Explain how George Orwell's novel Animal Farm can be classified as a beast fable, political satire, and a historical allegory. So in terms of a fable, you must demonstrate that the animals are personified, they have human traits, okay, and not just things like they can talk. We're talking about personality traits, because the animals are supposed to be a microcosm of society, a slice of life, okay? You must also demonstrate that Animal Farm teaches a lesson, a moral. What is that lesson? What is that moral? Satire, right? So it satirizes events in history. It satirizes communism, okay, as a political theory. An allegory. It is symbolic, right? So for example, there are people who represent real life people in Russian history, and there are events in the book that represent real life events, okay? Any questions about any of those questions? Okay, so keep your cameras on. I want to watch you work on these discussion questions. Then I'm going to be calling you at random to tell me what you got.
Miss, could you go over the second question? My Wi-Fi cut out.
The second question?
Yeah.
All you got to do is come up with as many examples. The question, you don't have to come up with topics. You only have to come up with as many examples as you can think of the pigs perverting language or the power of words to manipulate the animals, rewriting history, as many examples, and using terror or fear to control the animals. So all you have to do is come up with examples from the book for each of those three topics. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Make sure you have your Echoes book ready, okay? Because we're going to be reading poetry from our Echoes textbook. All right? Okay. Alan, discuss the reasons for the collapse of Animal Farm. Give me one reason.
So the main reason that animalism was created is to ensure that all animals would be equal and they would have the same amount of things and be treated the same. But like in naturally, it's like not possible for everyone to be equal, and because this is a political situation, it requires leadership. So the animals do need to be led by someone, and that naturally creates a diversion between the leaders and the common citizens. So, for example, as soon as Napoleon is assumes leadership, he's treated different from the rest. So he eats in a different place. He doesn't go out as often, and he's like not even called by his name anymore. But instead, he's called our leader or comrade, our leader, comrade Napoleon, or is given like prestigious names such as father of animals. So that's one of the reasons as to why animalism wouldn't really work.
So because we need leadership, right?
Yeah, because
Okay, because some people are natural born leaders and some people aren't, right? Okay, good job. All right. Japney, is your mic working?
Yeah.
Okay, then give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
I think that one of the reasons for the collapse of animalism is that the pigs didn't follow their own commandments. For example, animals shouldn't touch money or take part in trade because these are human tendencies. These two commandments are broken as Napoleon decides to trade with another farm and he wants to receive banknotes, which he gets scammed out of, I guess.
Okay, very good. So they broke the commandments, okay, that went about trading with humans and using money. Okay. Koa, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism. Okay, good. So fear and the use of dogs. Okay. Um, Aiden, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
I think it collapsed because the pigs realized that they needed the humans to succeed. Like for example, when they started trading with other farms, or when they used Mr. Whimper for stuff, they realized that they couldn't do it all on their own, and they needed the humans for it.
Yeah, they did need humans to succeed because they couldn't produce everything that they needed on the farm, right? And that's what Russia, who's Japanese, can you turn your mic off? Or is that Koa? They realized that they couldn't produce everything that they needed on the farm, and so they had to trade with humans. But it wasn't so much the trading with humans that brought their downfall. It was the fact, it was their pride, because they wanted to prove that they were just as good as the humans and just as smart and just as successful, right? And that in that wanting to prove that they were just as good as the humans, and in their pride, they began to resemble them and to emulate them. Adrian, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
One reason because of the collapse of animalism is because of the first commandment: whatever goes upon two legs is an enemy, which, if you think about it, is pretty unrealistic, as you can't expect every animal to hate humans. As some animals will eventually take a liking to them, like Molly, when she went to go live with the human that gave her pets and sugar, and even the pigs when they started trading with Mr. Whimper and even playing cards with Pilkington. So you couldn't generalize all humans to be enemies.
Okay, good. Yes, and it's kind of unrealistic, and it's a very simple idea. All humans are bad. It's very simplistic and a little unrealistic. Megdeep, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
The main reason is probably isolation when the pigs had their own meetings and they had their own barn and isolated themselves away from the animals, which led to rule of one group and which led to corruption.
Very good. The rule of one group. That's a good point, right? And, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That was one of the reasons for the collapse of animalism. That was one of the reasons for the collapse of communism, right? Why communism didn't work, because you were giving too much power to one group, especially when they did not have any private ownership. There was no private businesses, and the government controlled everything, and the government owned everything, right? So the Bolsheviks had too much power. They controlled everything, they owned everything, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That leads to corruption. Sarah, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
I think one of the reasons was like how it was supposed to be all animals were equal, but it like went out to be that it was like kind of the pigs that were kind of above the rest of the animals. And then also like with kind of dictatorship when the 7 commandments were changed. Kind of.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to finish, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yes, it was a dictatorship, and the pigs changed the commandments. And Samir, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
I wrote down the corruption of their like ideology. Like Napoleon controlled the animals, which made their ideas move opposite from old Major's ideas of animalism. Napoleon eventually forgets about animalism and collapses the whole idea.
Okay, but why did Napoleon collapse why did the idea of animalism collapse? You guys aren't getting to the fundamental principle here. Why is animalism impractical and unrealistic? So, you know, Alan mentioned one thing, because you can't have true equality, because humans don't have equal conditions when they are born. So, for example, some people are natural born leaders, others are not. Some people are smarter than others. That's a fact of life, right? Some people have, you know, everyone has different skills and different talents, right? So you can't have true equality. Some people are born into a wealthy family. Some people are born into a poor family. You know, but they might not have the same opportunities. So you can't really have true equality.
Also, the pigs were like more intelligent than the other animals.
Yes, definitely. So that's a big one. The pigs were more intelligent, right? So that gave them a natural superiority over the other animals. Maya Khan, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
Okay, so the reason for the collapse of animalism was the pigs breaking all 7 commandments and slowly becoming like human beings. The pigs were obviously smarter than all the other animals, and over time, Napoleon and his pigs became more and more like humans. By breaking the commandments, they were turning into human-like creatures. The pigs ripped the animals, fed them barely enough to survive, and made them do all the hard labor, which was also what Jones did to the animals in his time. The pigs slowly becoming like humans made animalism collapse because now the animals were no longer equal, which was the main reason of animalism.
Okay, very good. And that was, you know, what old Major said was the number 1 rule. Do not come to resemble human beings. All right, Ozazi, give me a reason for the collapse of animalism.
I put mainly power, like the power that the pigs had. Like, for example, the execution, how they broke the 6th commandment by killing some of the animals that confessed they were working with Snowball. This caused fear to most of the animals and kind of made them question the equality of the farm.
Okay, so that would be, for example, the executions, okay? So this question was looking at why animalism as a political theory can't work, right? So for example, if you're giving all the power to one group of people, right, that's too much power. And if you're giving ownership over everything to one group, you know, then for example, animalism didn't work because by nature, human beings are selfish, right? The government was supposed to evenly distribute everything amongst the Russian people, right? But instead of doing that, the government kept everything for themselves, okay? Because by nature, human beings are selfish. That's why animalism, i.e. communism, didn't work. Just like the pigs keeping all the milk and the apples for themselves. The pigs not doing any labor, because by nature, human beings are selfish, right? By nature, human beings are evil, right? We see that all the time. By nature, human beings are evil, generally speaking, right? You can't give you can't give a small group of people so much power, because by nature, human beings are evil, so they're going to become corrupt, right? And we see this in the execution of the animals. We see this in Joseph Stalin's purges of the 1930s. We see this in the fact that Joseph Stalin killed over 20 million people, okay? Okay, Sudharsan, you had number 2, right? All right.
Yes.
Give me an example of the pigs and the perversion of language.
The pigs, or just Squealer and Napoleon, has been changing many things throughout the book. Like since chapter 6, they have been changing commandments. Like no animal shall sleep in bed. They changed it to no animal shall sleep in bed with sheets. And another example is how all animals are equal, and they changed it to all animals are more equal than others.
Okay, very good. So they were changing the commandments. Obviously, there was the power of words, manipulating language in order to control and subjugate the animals. Gian, give me an example of the perversion of language.
An example of perversion of language is when Squealer uses it by saying that the milk and apples should be reserved for the pigs, since they are the brains and workers of the farm, and without them the farm cannot operate. Also, another way is when the sheep are taught to say 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and then the pigs told them to say after they learn how to walk on 2 legs, 4 legs good, 2 legs better instead.
Okay, very, very good examples. Very good examples. Okay, so Squealer's excuse for the pigs keeping the milk and the apples, that it was proven by science that pigs needed these, and they needed the pigs for the maintenance of the farm. Okay, and of course the sheep taking the commandment and transforming it into like a slogan. Okay, give me another example of the perversion of language. Harsimran.
When Napoleon first got the animals to think that Frederick was the enemy, and he said that he killed a horse, a dog, and starved the cows. But then he later sells the timber to Frederick and tells the animals that with his seeming friendship with Pilkington, he was working in secret agreement with Frederick, and the tales he said were false.
Okay, very good. Excellent. You guys were really good examples. Okay, give me an example of, where is the essay question? The rewriting of history. Maya Career.
They broke the rule of contact with humans. And Napoleon says, and animals would engage in the trade of neighboring farms. So they broke the rule of rewriting history because they
But how did they rewrite history? Did they say that that was never a commandment?
They said that the animals shouldn't work with humans, and that anything that goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. But then they changed their commandment to saying that they want to work with neighboring farms, which are humans.
Okay, good. Give me another example of rewriting history. Gabriel? Did you have that question? No, you didn't, right? Gabriel? You don't have that.
Oh, miss?
You don't
No,
have
I
that.
don't have that question.
Okay. So I have to go back to people who have already answered. Okay. Harsimran, give me an example of rewriting history.
When when Snowball fought in the Battle of Cowshed, Squealer said that Snowball actually fought against them and sided with Mr. Jones.
Very good. That's an excellent example of the rewriting of history, right? Um, and you know when you shape people's memories, when you change history, you control people's minds. You create their experiences. You create their reality, right? So a lot of animals hadn't been around for the Battle of the Cow Shed. So the pigs were creating that reality, right? They were creating their experiences. And that is an analogy of how the Russian government controlled the curriculum at school, right? And the history books, and they're the ones who wrote the history books, controlled the media outlets and all the information that people were getting and learning in schools and universities. It was all government controlled, and it was all propaganda. So they created their reality. Okay. And the use of terror. Gian?
One example is when Napoleon used terror to scare the animals and force them to confess, and then he carried out executions with the dogs to kill animals who disobeyed him.
Very good. So the executions are the most obvious example of the use of terror. Okay. Okay, we have to move on to the next question. I just looked at the time. Okay. Gabriel, give me a moral which is taught in Animal Farm.
One of the morals is that all animals are equal.
Okay. George Orwell did not try to teach us a lesson about animals. He tried to teach us a lesson about human beings. He's using animals to teach us a lesson about human beings, about society. And he's certainly not teaching us that all humans are equal. Because I think in the book it demonstrates that all humans are not equal. Okay?
What George was saying is that all human traits are evil, all the traits of men are evil.
Well, he was saying, okay, so you were on the right track. He wasn't saying that all humans are evil, okay? But he certainly was saying that human beings have a capacity for evil, okay? Not all human beings. That's too much of a generalization because a lot of the animals in the book aren't evil, right? So not all human beings are evil, but that human beings do have a profound capacity for evil. Okay, good. Give me another moral. Jasmine?
It's impossible to have a utopian society.
I can't hear you, hon.
It's impossible to have a utopian society.
An equal society?
Utopian society.
Utopian society. Yes, okay, it is impossible to have a utopian society. You can't have a utopian society is a perfect society, and you can't have a perfect society because human beings aren't perfect. Okay. Leba, give me a moral.
A moral is that education and knowledge gives you power.
Very good, definitely. The pigs automatically assumed superiority and leadership over the other animals as soon as they learned to read, right? As soon as they learned to read. So that gave them power. All right, good. Satire. Satire. Chelsea? What did you come up with for satire?
I said that by giving a small group of people power, they become corrupted and abuse their power. For example, when Napoleon uses his dogs to chase away Snowball, that is when he becomes in control and is no longer it is no longer a communist society, but a dictatorship. So when the pigs and the dogs get special treatment, like having green ribbons on their tails and sleeping in beds, they are now in control and it's no more a communist society like Old Major tried to achieve.
Very good, very good. Right? Because the pigs had all the power. As soon as Napoleon gets Snowball exiled, he is the one that has complete control, right? Just like the Bolsheviks and Joseph Stalin had complete control, right? Maya, are you putting your hand up? Oh, okay. All right, give me another satire. Jason?
Most of the story about the sugar candy mountain made the animals work harder in hopes that the story is really true. This is similar to the Russian Revolution, where religion was used to give people hope and therefore work needlessly.
Yes, good. So George Orwell is satirizing the use of religion, okay, and how the government used it for their own purposes and to manipulate the people. All right, very good. And an allegory. Give me something that is being allegorized, if that's even a word. Jasmine?
Napoleon represents with the animals rebelling against Mr. Jones represents the Russian Revolution.
Very good. And the people rebelling against Tsar Nicholas, right? Okay, good. Give me something else. Gabriel?
For one, Napoleon was sacrificing the hen's eggs for trade, which represents the industrialization. But like when the hens like broke the eggs, it represents how like the farmers like killed the animals and took all the crops, so they couldn't really use the land.
Yeah, very good. So that's where when the government wanted to collectivize all the farms, right? Put them all together. So people would own these farms, and pass them down generation from generation, and these were their farms. The government took them over, and he brought them all together, right? And to be like one massive, massive farm. And people were so upset that the government was taking their farms away from them that they killed their livestock and burned their crops. And then, of course, many of these people were executed or sent to the gulags, which were like hard labor camps where they were pretty much worked to death as punishment for what they were doing. Okay, and Chelsea, one more allegory.
The Battle of the Windmill represents the Battle of Stalingrad. This is when Hitler breaks his pact with Stalin and attacks Stalingrad. It is exactly how Napoleon and Frederick's business relationship was broken because Frederick tried to outsmart Napoleon. In the Battle of Stalingrad, millions of people die. That's what I said.
Very good. Where did you get that? I don't remember mentioning that in class. Did you look that up?
It was in the presentation, and I used my notes because I wrote extra notes.
Very good. Yes, it does represent the Battle of Stalingrad when Hitler took over Stalingrad. And okay, very good. All right, you guys did very well on these questions. Good job. And tomorrow, are there any questions about the essay, the comparison essay? Everyone's working on that? Okay, so let's see. I will see 1B in class on Thursday, but I will see all of you online tomorrow. Please have your Echoes books ready. We're going to start poetry. Yay! Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.